Hello and welcome to another podcast with me, James Walters, owner of Border Terrier Stanley and promoter of all things dog friendly via our Dog Friendly magazine and website. I'm here with Steve Bennett, long-time owner of Whippets and founder of the Dog Friendly business in 2003. The Doggy Podcast with Steve and James. In this week's podcast, we chat to Daniel Allen. Daniel was the driving force behind the recent legislation that has made pet theft a much more significant offence and has led to the Pet Abduction Act 2024. Previously, pet theft was seen as the equivalent of a stolen phone or electronic device. With the change of legislation in England and Northern Ireland, pet theft is now a serious offence and conviction can result in a prison sentence. Steve, why do you think the legislation change is so important for pet owners?
I think it probably came into real focus for me during the pandemic, because seeing the price of dogs in particular and seeing the massive increase in theft of dogs over that period, not only to sell them, but also to breed from them. With DogFriendly, we were getting so many contacts from members and visitors to our site that had had their dogs stolen, and it was awful. And that made me realise just how important it is that we do have legislation in place that makes stealing a dog a real crime. And the thought that a dog can be compared to something like a mobile phone was just appalling to me. So I think what we're going to hear about today and what Daniel and his colleagues and team have achieved is absolutely incredible and very much needed.
Hello, Daniel. Thank you for joining us today to talk about such an emotive subject that affects a lot of pet owners.
Yeah, thank you for having me on the podcast.
Daniel, tell us a little about yourself. I think it's safe to say you're a big animal lover, and this has led to such a passion for a law change.
Yeah, definitely. I've always been surrounded by animals. I've always been surrounded by pets. So as a small child, things like hamsters, guinea pigs, rabbits, cockatiels, cats. It's something where that emotional bond with animals has always been there. And it's something where dogs, surprisingly, a dog was never a part of my family, a part of my life until I became an adult. Partly because I was quite scared of dogs as a child. So, but that's kind of very much changed now. But alongside that, I suppose also in terms of wildlife, just fascinated by all types of species. Otters was something that really kind of fascinated me as a child. In adult life, in academic life, as an animal geographer, I've done lots of research about otter hunting, otter conservation, and then more recently looking at dog theft. And I suppose human-animal relations in policy and practice, trying to understand what the laws are, what people think and feel and experience, and how potential interventions can be sort of created and put in place to improve those lives of pets, improve those lives of animals, and also improve the lives of people.
You just said animal geographer, Daniel. I've not heard that one before. What is an animal geographer?
No, good question. So animal geographer is what I'm really interested in is the cultural significance of animals around the world. Also the lived experiences of animals. So things like animal welfare, animal rights. So I'm interested in, why do different people think different ways about different animals? Simple as that, really. And I suppose looking at that, what I'm interested in is human-animal relations and policy and practice. So thinking about how the public think about animals, thinking about the political the legislation that's in place or not, and trying to figure out if there's any gaps there, any ways in which the lives of animals can be improved, the lives of people connected to animals can be improved, where things such as the pet theft reform campaign sort of come in.
So tell us, Daniel, a little bit about the Pet Abduction Act that became law in England and Northern Ireland in August.
Yeah, so the Pet Abduction Act it's a piece of law that's taken probably 2 decades to get to that stage to become law. So Debbie Matthews of Vets Get Scanning, she started campaigning for pet theft as a specific offence back in 2006. From 2014, I think it was, the Stolen Missing Pets Alliance emerged, and they've been campaigning for just the same. They were doing remarkable work. They had like MP drop-ins, for example, in 2017, had loads of MPs supporting this idea of having pet theft as a specific offence with a higher sentence and just taking it more seriously. And then in 2018, I got involved and thought, we need to start a campaign where we all work together, we collaborate, we build a bigger team. And that's where the Pet Theft Reform campaign was born. And 2018 through to 2024 is a lot of campaigning, a lot of hard work, a lot of kind of petitioning, media engagement, social media engagement, writing, research, all those sorts of things, working with politicians, working with volunteers, working with victims. Pet Abduction Act eventually comes through. Anna Firth MP, she takes it forward as a private member's bill. It works its way through the House of Commons, through the House of Lords. Rishi Sunak calls a general election, so we just have a few weeks. It could have got lost, but basically got exported by the government, got fast-tracked, it became law. And what it does, it recognises the fact that pets are more than property, the fact that pets are family, that they are sentient, and it gives access to a 5-year custodial sentence. So it's taking this crime, the abduction of dogs and cats, more seriously. There's a specific law for this. It's a specific offence, and yeah, it's been quite an achievement really, because it's a change in attitude really. It's seeing theft go to abduction hasn't happened before, so this is unique in the world. It's something where England and Northern Ireland are the first places to actually recognise pet abduction. So it's something which is quite an achievement really. If you look at the amount of change that it's actually created.
This term that's used in the law, sentient, pets are recognised as sentient beings. What does that specifically mean?
Yeah, so with sentience, we think, we feel, we're happy, we're sad, we have pain, we have all these things as humans, as people. It's the same for animals, and that's something which hasn't really been recognised in law previously in the UK. So you've got the Animal Welfare Act, you've got the Animal Sentience Committee now in place, which is great, good start. But it's something where, if a dog or cat was stolen before they were abducted, they were simply seen as inanimate objects. They were seen as objects which didn't have sentience. They were seen as a laptop. They were seen as a mobile phone, plant pot. That's completely wrong. That's something which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So the fact that sentience is now being recognised within this Pet Abduction Act is really important. It's something that hopefully sentience will be enshrined more into wider laws also, which should be happening.
Daniel, it feels like the campaigning is a cross between your own personal interests and also the people that you interact through your own work. What particularly triggered you to get this campaign running?
I think the inspiration was a number of different things. So firstly, it was seeing that more and more dogs were being stolen on an annual basis. Second, it was sort of seeing the fact that many people on social media were getting in touch with me to sort of say, can you share this poster of my stolen dog? And I was thinking, yeah, of course I'll share it. Yeah, of course. But more people got in touch. I was thinking, well, if everybody who's had a dog stolen asks one person to share that poster, are all of them going to be helped in the same way? Will they all go viral? Probably not. What else can be done? And then looking around at what more can be done, the third thing was seeing the work that Debbie Matthews and the Stolen Missing Pets Alliance were doing. I already knew Debbie Matthews from pet shows, from animal welfare committee meetings and stuff. And they were doing fantastic work. They managed to get lots of MPs to support having pet theft as a specific offence. And those things came together. And the fourth thing, which I think was the kind of tipping point, which was the real trigger, was the fact that Rupert, my first dog, Louise's chocolate Labrador, which I became a part of their family. We had an amazing bond. Sadly, he passed away 2 years ago. But it was a thought that if somebody was to take Rupert from us, what would we do? How would I feel? How would I be able to act? Who would I go to ask for help? How would I even function? I don't think I'd be able to function. Just the thought was kind of terrifying, actually. So what it was that all came together. I reached out to the Stolen Missing Pets Alliance, said, let's work. I love the work you're doing. Let's work together. Let's take this campaign to the next level and really sort of make it, get the public involved, get the politicians involved, get celebrities involved. We'll do more TV, we'll do more radio, we'll do petitions. Basically, being inspired by the work of like Lucy's Law with Mark Abraham and also Finn's Law and other sort of grassroots campaigns at that time. And that's kind of how it all started. It was the fact that how would you feel as an individual if your dog was taken from you? Terrible, obviously, won't be able to function. And also seeing an amazing campaign which was in place, which was fantastic foundation to take this to the next level and hopefully change the law.
And a lot of our listeners and members, I'm sure they will have that kind of emotional feeling. Some of them unfortunately have lost pets, etc. So we'll totally understand that passion behind getting things changed. To support the Pet Reform Act, I'm sure you had to come up with quite a lot of research. Tell us how you pulled quantitative and qualitative research together to support the change in the law.
That's a really good question. That's a really good point, because before we started the pet theft reform campaign, there was one academic paper from the UK which was looking at dog theft today, and that came from the Dogs Trust. Aside from that, there was some historical work about Victorian dog theft, which is also very interesting. But I just thought we need it needs to be an evidence-based campaign. And as an academic, that's something where I can sort of do research with various other academics from various other disciplines. And firstly, we started off by trying to get the data. So we're trying to get the actual figures from police forces. Because the data is not in the public domain, it's not a specific offence. So we had to sort of do freedom of information requests and find out about the data and see if more dogs are being stolen, which dogs are being stolen, where they're being stolen from, those sorts of things. So we did that, and we recognised, yes, that it is an ongoing issue and there is an increasing issue here. Also, we started thinking about the geographical trends, so the kind of spaces of dog theft, trying to figure out where they're stolen from the most. Are there certain places and certain strategies that can be put in place to help prevent that? So gardens and houses are basically the main places that dogs are stolen from. You hear a lot of stuff about being left outside a shop or in a car. Obviously, don't do that. Always keep an eye on them. But the main places which are being targeted are gardens and houses. Alongside that, it's about seeing how the victims and those who actually help the victims have experienced this crime. So this is where the qualitative, the interviews came in. We did a lot of work about the emotional impact, the trauma and the personal impact of pet theft. So looking at the experiences, looking at how people, basically, it's a really traumatic experience, and that wasn't being recognised by the law. And also seeing how people search for their pets when they are stolen, and looking at organisations like Dog Lost, who do amazing work for free to actually help victims get reunited with lost and stolen pets. Alongside that, I've worked with academics to look at pets as property. So what does it actually mean when companion animals such as dogs are stolen? What does it mean if the law changes to abduction? And also seeing how online searching, can actually act as a community, a supported community, but also help, individual animals become more, I suppose, high profile, potentially going viral in sort of virtual environments. And the research that we're doing at the moment, which is about to be submitted to various journals, is looking at the actual experiences of the dogs themselves. So we've been interviewing caregivers or owners, whichever word you want to use, of people who've had their dogs reunited, try and figure out exactly what those dogs may have experienced when they've been taken. Some come back with various injuries, some come back with behavioural issues, some come back unchanged seemingly. So it's trying to figure that out as well. So there's a whole broad spectrum, a whole body of work which has provided evidence, which will then help change the law, but it should help further laws change, hopefully across the world.
If somebody wanted to find out more about this research, is this available online or elsewhere?
Yeah, so we've got a website, pettheftreform.com. It's something there. Academic work is in place. It tells you about the research we've been doing, tells you about all the people in the team, political progress, prevention advice, and also what pet theft reform is, the various things we've been requesting alongside the specific offence, other things as well, such as looking at having a central database for microchipping, making chips count, and that kind of stuff.
Daniel, is it confirmed how many dogs are stolen each year?
So the figures that come from the police are never fully accurate. They're always incomplete. But what we can tell is the most recent figures that have come through, you usually have about 2,500 dogs every year stolen as a minimum. That's the baseline. We also know that some Some police forces are more difficult to get crime references from, so they won't be recorded. Some dogs get lost and then they get stolen, say theft by finding, they wouldn't be recorded. Some people don't go to the police, that'd be a fewer, but they won't be recorded either. So the likelihood is that it's closer to 5,000 a year as a guess. We can't be, it's just an estimate really. But we know as a baseline, at least 2,500 a year, which is far too many. It's just, you think, oh, that's not a great deal compared to other crimes. Yeah, but that's potentially, 2,000 plus families that are going through this. And that's something which we need to stop. We need to reduce anyway. That we can definitely reduce it. So hopefully this is something where the Pet Abduction Act will eventually sort of have that impact going forward.
Dan, from the research you've done, how much of the pet theft is organised crime and how much do you feel is opportunity? And what do you think the main reasons are for people to steal a pet?
Well, I think the fact that most dogs are kind of targeted and they're taken from homes and gardens suggests that it's more organised. It accounts for about 50% of all stolen dogs. In terms of exact numbers, the opportunists are the folk that will be taking dogs from outside shops, from cars and that stuff. That's a much smaller percentage. If you think about the money that's involved, there has to be an element of organisation there so that dogs are sold on and that they are moved to another part of the country. So even opportunists might eventually take dogs that end up being a part of a more organised system. So the general thinking is, and if we think back to the pandemic, when there was lots and lots of talk about this, there seemed to be a slight change in terms of the targeting. There seemed to be more mums with pups being taken, which was definitely organised because it was just a quick way of selling on pandemic pups. The dogs that end up being taken end up in puppy farms, again, very much organised crime. So I think generally that the driving force behind dogs being stolen is organised crime. And opportunists are always going to be opportunists. And it doesn't matter what you do with laws and so forth. If somebody hasn't got any money and they're very poor and they want to be able to make 50 quid or 100 quid to do whatever they do, selling a dog in a pub, that still happens. But if it's about taking a dog which is then going to be used as a part of a bigger money-making scheme, going to puppy farms, whatever it might be, or just being sold on to the public, the unknown public don't know necessarily generally don't know the dog's been stolen, and they go back into the market and people buy them for high prices. So I think the general consensus, speaking to various, in terms of police and various other experts across the field in relation to this, that it is generally organised crime is the driving force.
You've managed to work with quite a team of people, and you've mentioned some of those before, but who would you say the main people involved in getting the law changed have been, Daniel?
There's been so many people along the way, so I'm definitely going to end up forgetting people. I really do apologise in advance if that is the case, because there's no way of mentioning everybody. I think with the coalition, we created a Pet Theft Reform Coalition, and SAMPA itself, the Stolen Missing Pets Alliance, is Vets Get Scanning, it's Dog Lost, it's Pet Theft Awareness, and Dog Union. So they were the starting point. That was the original kind of grassroots organisations that were involved. We then got a number of experts in place to help. So we had people such as, obviously, Debbie Matthews is there up front. We've got the academics, Helen Selby-Fell, Jamie Arathun, who've been working on a lot of papers. Mark Abraham has been a massive supporter. He's done a lot of work with us over the years of Lucy's Law and so forth. He's been great as a part of AppDog as well. Professor John Cooper QC, he was our original kind of legal advisor, and he took the time to guide us and advise us, volunteering his time and expertise, which was so very much appreciated. So his work was so important. Beverly Cuddy, Dogs Today, she was a part of the team as well. And it was them that helped put together the first kind of documents, which went to the MP dropping, and we ended up giving out 600 of them, 600 MPs. Everybody got given a copy of our 2018 pamphlet talking about why pet theft reform is so important. And then there's various other organisations that started to come to us and work with us as we sort of went forward. So so many people, Jane Fallon, Chris Packham, all these sorts of people, Victoria Stilwell, Brenda Blethyn, Pam Ayres, all these sorts of celebrities have been so fantastic in sharing their platforms and helping with the campaign over the past 7 or 8 years. We had the smaller organisations like Murphy's Army, the FOAL group, Focus on Animal Law group, and then the bigger organisations start to come on board as well after a few years. So we had like Blue Cross, Kennel Club, Dogs Trust, RSPCA, Battersea, Cats Protection, lots of organisations have all come together. And of course, you can talk about all of that, but without MPs actually being able to take this over the line and create some kind of legislation, none of this would actually happen. So that's something, again, which has started off with people like Gareth Johnson. He's Conservative MP for Dartford. And then it sort of moved on with people like Lisa Cameron, Tom Hunt. We've got Ian Duncan Smith has been a massive supporter, Siobhan Bailey. And then as with politics and government, there's always changes, there's constant changes. So it's very difficult to sort of keep up with what's happening. But we had people like Sir David Ames, who I don't know if you're aware, but he was sadly killed 2 or 3 years ago in his own constituency. And he was a massive supporter, and he was such a lovely man. And he did so much for us as well, helping the campaign. And then Anna Firth MP actually ended up taking his seat in Southend West. And she took on the mantle, and she also really supported this. She was the MP who actually put this private members bill together. So Anna Firth deserves lots of recognition for this, because she from a legal background, she did so much work to get this private members bill supported by the government. It's her bill which actually became law. So all these things have to come together, and there needs to be that recognition for everybody involved, because it's not just me. I was the founder of Pet Theft Reform. I was the figurehead of the campaign alongside Debbie Matthews. But there's no way whatsoever that this would have even become anywhere near law had we not had all those different organisations, individuals, supporters, MPs working together. So it really is about teamwork. And obviously the public. If the public hadn't supported our government petitions and helped our petitions get over 100,000 signatures, ending up with parliamentary debates, again, this might not have actually happened. So every single individual who has signed one of our petitions in the past also helped make a difference. So I think that's the key thing, that everybody who has supported this has helped.
Daniel, I understand it took 3 petitions to get the bill passed by the House of Commons and then House of Lords. You kind of mentioned this, but why did it take so long to get such a common sense law introduced?
I don't know. I think politics is just so slow, and there's always so many changes within governments and cabinets, and there's also generally not a real kind of warm reception for creating new laws or changing old laws. So everything's against you anyway, I think. We had the first 3 petitions that we had to keep changing direction slightly as well, because initially we wanted to change the sentencing guidelines. Then we thought about putting it into the Animal Welfare Act. Then we changed again. So we had to sort of be very agile in terms of our approach. And I don't know, it's just strange that the first 3, obviously COVID happened somewhere in between there as well. So that slowed the process down even further. But it was something where getting those 100,000 signatures leads to a parliamentary debate. And you see how supportive every single MP is when they stand up and talk about having pet theft as a specific offence or pet abduction as a specific offence. Then it's down to the government to actually make these changes. So what eventually happened, there was another 2 petitions after that. So there was another one which got over 300,000 signatures, which was it was a part of Pet Theft Reform, but that was somebody else was the author of that, and we supported it, and that did amazingly well. And that led to another sort of debate, I think. And then we had one which got about 50,000 signatures right at the tail end of it all. It almost happened a few years earlier. So with the Kept Animals Bill, which was the Animal Welfare Act revisions, it was like a Christmas tree act, had everything in it. And pets abduction was meant to be a part of it. And then after 2 years, it got dropped. And we thought, oh no, that's it. So many things got dropped, including puppy smuggling, which is still a really important campaign now, which is trying to make that law. But that was one of the things that got dropped. Pet abduction, other stuff went as well, ear cropping and all sorts. So it was something where we kept getting all these different things happening, and it was just, I guess, partly bad timing. But there was the increasing political support for some kind of change. We had the Pet Theft Task Force that emerged sort of after COVID. They said that there should be pet abduction offence. And then we were just lucky, really, in terms of we managed to have Anna Firth, who took on the pet abduction bill. That was something where it is a private member's bill. So had there not been an MP that wanted to do that, that wouldn't have come about anyway. And then it was a case of we could have lost it again when the election was called. Things like puppy smuggling got dropped, the new bill that came through. We were lucky enough to be further along the line, I suppose, in terms of getting through to the Lords. And then it was fast tracked through. So I think it's just a case of politics is slow generally, and creating new laws is really hard.
Definitely you get the impression that there's a lot of luck in things coming together. So it could have happened a couple of years ago, but it maybe not have happened for 10 years sort of thing if things didn't come together at the right time.
I think so. I think it depends on, which ministers you've got in the cabinet who actually make those decisions. It's great having lots of MPs that support what you do, but if they're not the influencers, if they're not the decision makers in the right roles, it's not necessarily going to, amend a law or create a law. So it is a case of making sure that you have people that do support what you do. MPs are constantly changing roles, changing positions in terms of the party they're in and the government they might be in. So you do have to meet a lot of MPs as well. We did it largely online. We initially started doing it in person, but online works just as well these days. So it's luck and hard work, I think, together.
The Pet Abduction Act isn't recognised in Scotland or Wales, Dan. Why is this?
Yeah, it's really frustrating, actually, because it's a devolved issue. They get Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland get to choose what they wanted to do. So they could have adopted it if they wanted to. And Northern Ireland chose to adopt it, which was very good. Wales mentioned resources, in that there weren't enough resources to take this forward. That's pretty much all that was said, which is a bit odd. Presumably that's resource in relation to policing. And then Scotland, they've already got the dog abduction bill, which is proposed. Maurice Golden has taken that forward. He's done loads of really excellent work on it. It looks like that may well become law relatively soon if it passes the next stage. But that's just for dogs. It's not cats as well, but it will have the opportunity to add other animals in there as well. So it looks like Scotland will happen. And when Scotland happens, Wales will just be left by themselves. So everywhere else, if a dog is taken, it will be seen as abduction. If a dog's taken in Wales, it would just be seen as an animate object, property that's been taken. Sentience, emotional bond, family aspect, not going to be taken into consideration. So at some stage, Wales is going to have to catch up. So I think eventually we're talking with MPs in Wales, and I'm still working with Maurice up in Scotland. So I think it's something which will eventually have to become consistent, because it just seems pretty ridiculous, really, if different parts of the UK have such different laws in relation to dogs. So I think it's something which will eventually come around, and for the public to keep sort of mentioning this to their MPs, because if you're in Scotland or if you're in Wales, if this is an issue which is important to you, you've seen that in England and Northern Ireland have changed the law. Why not sort of say, please support this in Scotland, please support this in Wales. It should be happening here too, because this law does help protect people and pets. It would take a while.
Yeah, I agree. Are there any petitions currently live that dog owners in those countries could sign and help support?
No, at the moment, I think all the petitions kind of ended. So it's something where if you wanted to start a petition in Wales, for example, it's very easy to put one together. You have to be based in Wales, and we'd happily support it and share it online. So if that was something which you were listening and you're thinking, I'd like to make some kind of difference in Wales, that would be great. Same as Scotland. So that's something where pet theft reform and myself as an individual, more than happy to support anybody that wants to do those things. There had been a petition in Republic of Ireland. I think that's still running. So I'm working with some Irish activists and campaigners who are also doing really, really important work as well. So the hope is that pet theft reform can spread and pet abduction can sort of be recognised in far more places than just England and Northern Ireland, because it's about having protection but also having justice for people and pets that go through the experience of theft or abduction. So I think it's something which hopefully over the years will start to be sort of adopted by more people, more campaigners. It's not something I can do by myself or our current team can do by ourselves. It's something where people in other countries, if you're interested in this and you're thinking, wonder if we could do this somewhere else, get in touch. I'm more than happy to advise, help.
And Daniel, is there any other countries that have in Europe or America has contacted you about this where they would like to introduce laws similar?
In Europe, Republic of Ireland's been the main one. I was talking with people in Gibraltar, surprisingly, quite a few years back. That kind of faded out slightly. People in Australia have been in touch, beyond Europe, obviously. So, and a few people in the US have been in touch as well. But the US is so complicated because state laws all seem to be all different, aren't they? So
yeah,
so that's it. But so there's been interest over the years from various countries. And I think, it comes down to the fact in terms of the numbers that are taken as well. I think it does seem to be a particular issue in the UK in terms of how it's connected to organised crime. And it will be similar in other parts of the world. I was talking at the very outset to people in China about this as well, because obviously with dog theft and those sorts of, they were a dog meat campaign who were talking to me about stuff, and they were talking about dogs that were stolen to become food, which is obviously horrible. So that there is interest, and it is something where if people are just listening into this and thinking, oh, actually, I'm not from UK, or I know somebody or another kind of organisation or another charity or another grassroots campaign or campaigner that might find this interesting, just get them to send me an email.
Tell us a bit about mandatory pet scanning, and this is something that's been campaigned for some time, and just why it's so important with the act that's just been passed.
Yeah, so this is something which Debbie Matthews has been working on. Debbie's amazing. I'm going to keep name dropping her again and again and again because she's such an amazing campaigner. She does it all in her free time. She's been doing this since 2006 when her 2 dogs were stolen and they got reunited, which was amazing. Microchipping in the UK is it's a strange one really, because now it's compulsory for dogs and cats to be microchipped, but it's not compulsory for authorities to scan and check the chips. So, you might think that you're taking your dog for an annual check at the vets. They're going to scan, they're going to check just to make sure the chip's, in the same place and it's still working, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't have to be done. There's no need for it to be done. It's within sort of good best practice, but it's not legal. It's not a legal requirement. So you legally have to microchip your pet, your dog and your cat, or you get fined. You legally have to sort of connect it to a DEFRA-approved microchipping database, of which I think there's 22 of them now, which is a bit confusing. But the other side of it, they don't have to be scanned and checked. So it's already a broken system in those terms. And what happens with dogs that are being stolen and then they're being bought and then they're being taken to the vets because they've been bought by somebody who don't know they're stolen. They're obviously looking after their pets and making sure they're very well looked after. If that dog was being scanned on that first veterinary check and they could see, well, actually, yeah, this dog doesn't actually belong to this person, it could then be reunited with the actual family who've had their dog taken from them. So we don't know how many dogs are being sort of bought, which have been stolen and abducted, and then are being cared for by the new family, which is often the case, which is it's a good thing to know for those that have had dogs taken. But then taken to the vets and they're not scanned, despite the person who's actually followed the law to microchip, update their details, log it with a correct database. They've followed the law. They've done everything they have to do, but the law's then letting them down because there's a loophole whereby the kind of the circuit of it all isn't actually fitted together. So this new law, in terms of Pet Abduction Act, doesn't do anything at all in relation to microchipping. But what we've also been doing over the years is campaigning to make chips count, to make sure that there has to be scanning, even if it's just annual checks by veterinary practices. There has to be by authorities also. So if it's police, if it's wardens, if it's rescues, whatever. It's just making sure that that's something that does happen. It's not just good practice, best practice. It's something which you have to do. Because otherwise, what's the point? There's going to be a lot of dogs that are remaining missing, stolen for long periods. And the perfect example is a dog called Fern. And one of the campaigns that I mentioned on the Pet Theft Reform website is Fern's Law. And Fern was taken, Fern was stolen, Fern disappeared for over 5 years, and then was abandoned and found and scanned, taken to a veterinary practice and scanned again, found out who the dog belonged to. Fern belongs to their family somewhere miles away, returned to their family. But what they found, the vet found that the dog had basically been breeding, had various kind of injuries, likelihood is Fern had been in a puppy farm, breeding litter after litter after litter, was no longer of any use to those people that were using her. So she was let go and just abandoned on the road. And the fact that a microchip was scanned, it was checked, and then Fern was reunited 5 or 6 years later shows that microchips can work. Microchips can be a fantastic tool for sort of reuniting missing and stolen pets. But the loophole at the moment whereby scanning doesn't have to be done really needs to close.
I understand, Dan, you've had a couple of award nominations for your work.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's really nice to be recognised. It's nice that the campaign's recognised and the work of everybody involved is recognised. I find it a bit tricky sometimes where I'm kind of identified as the person who should be awarded, because it is, as I said before, it's about teamwork. But I recognise as a figurehead that's something which is important. Some of the campaigns awards, what we had, both Debbie and myself got the special recognition award from the People's Pet Awards from Daily Mirror. That was, I think, 2021. UK Points of Light, that's the Prime Minister Award. So we, again, both myself and Debbie Matthews, we went to 10 Downing Street and we met the Prime Minister at that time in a kind of garden party with lots of other amazing kind of Points of Light award winners. And then, yeah, there's a few other things as well. We've had various nominations. The most recent nomination was Pride of Britain, which, it was just really nice to be recognised. There was no way in which the pet theft reform would sort of win something like that, because Pride of Britain is about different sorts of things, in my opinion. But just to get that recognition and for the Daily Mirror to actually sort of talk about the campaign was really nice. It's nice to sort of get that recognition, because one of the things that we find with animal campaigning, especially grassroots animal campaigning, is that the big organisations get involved when they know something's going to happen, and they like to take the credit for it at the end. So not just with pet theft reform, with lots of different campaigns. And it's sometimes it's a case where I've seen it happens to other campaigners and other campaigns, and they get forgotten for all the work that they've done. So for me, these kind of national awards are important because it recognises the hard work of everybody involved in the campaign. And it's something which I think that's important because, pet theft reform and other sort of grassroots campaigns is basically done by volunteers. We dedicate our time because it's something we're passionate about, we're enthusiastic about, and we want to help. We want to make sure that people, that make sure there's some kind of justice for people and pets. So I think that's the nice thing. That's the really positive thing, that there is recognition for the work that all of our team has done.
And to be fair, Daniel, I think the fact that we're talking today is because the article came out and Pride of Britain, and I'd seen something that was flagged up how you were involved in the Pet Reform Act. So in terms of educating people and finding out more and developing support from various more elements of the community, I think this is where it does benefit. But what are you doing now, Daniel? What's your focus now that the Pet Abduction Act is in force? You've told us quite a lot. There's still contacts about Scotland and Wales. Is that your focus now?
Yes, my focus now is largely behind the scenes. It's largely Scotland, Wales, Republic of Ireland. It's helping the people that are doing campaigning in those places. So Scotland, working with Maurice Gold and the MSP. In Wales, it's just making sure that there is that constant reminder that this is happening in England, Northern Ireland, but it's not happening in Wales. In Republic of Ireland, it's working with folk that are doing really important work out there. So it's making sure that the likelihood is there'll be more sort of meetings online with various politicians from different parts of the UK and Republic of Ireland next year. So that's the kind of key thing. I think there's still research ongoing. So that, as I said before, there's research about the experiences of the dogs themselves when they're stolen. So that's another sort of important thing. Yeah, so there's lots of work to be done. And alongside that, the other thing which I think in 2025 we'll be looking at more so is working with police forces, working with various academics that have connections with police forces around the UK. It's going to take a while to start looking at the figures from the Pet Abduction Act and how that's recorded by the police, and what if any changes have actually happened since August 2024. But it is something where we need to start thinking about how there can be ongoing collaborations with police forces, and there can be interventions that can be created at a regional level, because police forces still engage with things differently across the UK. So that's again something which is important. So there's lots of things happening. There's less kind of, I suppose, of the kind of public engagement campaigning that I had been doing previously, but that's still obviously things like this podcast are really important. And I appreciate the fact that you mentioned that seeing that Mirror article with Pride of Britain got you really interested. And that, as you say, it's really important. That public engagement is still important, because otherwise people think pet theft reform is complete. It's not. There's a lot of work to do still.
And at that point about the police actually enforcing the law, there's a lot around that as well. I'm sure what's happened in the last year or 6 months, etc. So it's great to have you on the podcast today, Daniel. Just remind listeners where they can find out more with any future campaigns or information on the campaigns that have been done previously.
Yes, so if you're interested in pet theft reform, pettheftreform.com is the website to look at. There's lots of information on there about how the campaign developed, what we've done, people involved, what you can do next. So keep an eye on that. That's the best place to go. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, Dr_Dan_1. Also quite easily found on LinkedIn. I seem to do more posts on LinkedIn these days. So that's another place to look.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Daniel. It's been great to talk to you about quite an important subject, and well done on helping with your team to get this through the Parliament.
Thank you ever so much for chatting with me.
Thanks, Daniel. To find out more about DogFriendly, the DogFriendly magazine, the DogFriendly Awards, visit www.dogfriendly.co.uk.